Thank you for joining us for another episode of Attribution Nation. In our new series, the series we're in right now, we're stepping into the C-suite to hear directly from CMOs navigating today's most complex marketing challenges. From AI disruption and age-old alignment battles with sales, we'll unpack the real reporting and data challenges that leaders are solving for right now, and in some cases that still keep them up at night. Join us for candid conversations that go beyond metrics into the strategies, experiments, and lessons shaping the future of marketing leadership. Today, I am joined by Nate Skinner, CMO at 8am, formerly known as AffiniPay. And we're going to talk a lot about some really interesting topics that are near and dear to Nate's heart, including why attribution is broken, the power of unbiased analytics, this concept that you introduced about reporting and not just reading the news. I love that one. We're going to get into that. And why trial experience may be your most valuable conversion lever. But first off, Nate, I want to just congratulate you on the rebranding. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much, Drew. We're excited about it. We're excited for our customers to learn more about how we've kind of moved this 20-year-old company forward in a way that's meaningful for our customers and for the industry. So we're pretty excited.
Awesome. I actually have a question specific to your rebrand, but we're going to save it for later. Okay. Where I want to start, Nate, is just tell us a little bit about how you got into marketing, a little bit about your career path that's led you up to, where you are today.
Yeah, great. I kind of have two chapters to my technology career. The chapter one was about 10 years in the field. So I was a sales rep. I started as an inside sales rep. So shout out to all the SDRs out there.
Same here.
Yeah, great. So that was, aging myself, but 1999. And I spent the next 10 years in the field, customer facing, had a bag, carried a quota, had a territory, had a sales team. Moved into marketing in 2009 when I joined Salesforce as a product marketer. And it's funny, that question, because, how did you get into marketing? I remember George Hu, the COO at the time of Salesforce, asked me, why do you want to be in marketing in my interview? At that time, he was still did all certain level interviews for marketing personnel. And I said, I didn't. I always thought marketers were people that couldn't sell and couldn't code, and I could do both at the time. And so, but I understood that product marketing and how to position and message and how to frame what we do that is usually a technical thing into terms that customers understood and the outcomes we could help drive. That was what I was good at. And so product marketing was a natural fit for me. I got that job, thankfully, changed my kind of career trajectory. And ever since then, I've evolved my skills and my kind of participation in a variety of ways to the point where today I'm the CMO of 8am.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you came from a sales background. I did as well. I started my first 3.5 years carrying a quota. I burned out on that because we had monthly quotas, not quarterly and annual quotas. So it was a grind. But I
remember, it's funny, Drew, because I remember thinking about my career path back in 2008 or so and thinking, I'm going to be old before my time if I keep on this sales path. And now I also acknowledged that I was foregoing potential wealth. You make a lot of money in sales if you're good at it. And I was pretty good at it. But I decided that two things that mattered to me. One was in sales, it's feels like a one-to-one. I can affect my deal, my customer, but I don't have that much effect on all customers and all deals. And I liked that part of my job when I started to be a sales leader and I did demos for other reps that helped them close deals. That I got a lot more gratification from. And the second was, I'm not that financially motivated. A lot of the best salespeople I know, financial motivation is a critical motivator, and I just wasn't that. So it made sense for me. I definitely feel like I've left some money on the table, but I'm okay with that. It's all worked out well, and I really do appreciate that in marketing we can have a one-to-many impact, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. So on that note, one of the things that you and I talked about when we had our pre-call session is that attribution is broken. And now that's weird coming on a show called Attribution Nation, and we're going to talk about how attribution is broken. But I want to hear your thoughts on this and your perspective on why you think attribution is broken.
Yeah, to me, the reason it's broken is the modern buyer's journey. I mean, you add in, LLMs and the ability to search Perplexity or Grok or Gemini or whatever and say, what's the best legal software platform for my 5-person law firm? And that is not the way you used to start your journey. You used to start potentially with a Google search or maybe even with your network or on a social platform, asking your coworkers or friends. But in all of those cases, the modern journey for customers is dynamic. It's not linear. And so the idea, most attribution models, and the simplest ones, first touch or last touch, assume a linear path. But we're not linear behavior anymore. It's kind of, you might go to an event and then you go check out a website or you ask Gemini a question or whatever. And all those touch points matter. And to assume that you attribute credit for a deal that closes from one of those many interactions is the wrong assumption. And what that does is it creates behavior that drives the wrong outcomes. Because if we say, oh, look, the source that's really driving our conversions, the highest converting leads to deals is this source, and you put everything you got into that one, then you've ignored the rest of the journey that customers potentially are on. I like to say to my team, today's website visitor is next year's customer. We don't want to lose them. We want to keep track of them. We want to stay present with them. But the idea that next year, one of those folks might hit our chat or talk to a rep and that we would attribute that to sales, that's wrong. And we just defunded, the website because we said, oh, all our MQLs are converting from sales touches. It's just, it causes bad behavior. And that's why I think it's broken.
I mean, I don't disagree with anything you just said. So we're on the same page there. So with that being said, what are you using to kind of address those shortcomings, we'll call it, of traditional attribution?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, but kind of if you move it upstream, the first question is, what are we trying to solve for? Are you trying to solve for credit? Are you trying to solve for budget allocation? Are you trying to solve for resource allocation? Like we only have so many bodies and what do we do with them? For us, we focus on not the credit part. We focus on what's working and what's not. And working in terms of kind of the customer's experience, outside in, not inside out. And by definition, then we're solving the attribution puzzle because we weight everything. So a touch point for a marketing touch, or a touch for a sales touch, or a touch for our customer success team, or a case that comes in through support, those all have a weight. And we can see all of those touch points in our multi-touch attribution engine, which we're a Marketo shop, so we use their solution. And what that gives us is better sense of how many touches it takes, and we can do cohort compares, like all of the highest converted, highest value customers we've reached over the last year or quarter or whatever. We can see the commonality they have, the characteristics that lead to that success, and we can compare that to the path that non-converted nurtures have gone through. And we're like, look, the folks that come in and check out our website and check out our blog and check out our content that don't convert happen to be students and people that are educating themselves in the market. And the people that do check out our pages and do check out pricing and do check out solution demos are customers in the market looking for a solution. And so we can route those differently and treat them differently. We don't want to ever ignore anybody, but we can treat them differently. And that is the way we approach the impact that multi-touch attribution can have for our business.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, we try to advise clients all the time to not play the credit game. The credit game is just a recipe for disaster. And for marketers, 95% of the time when you start playing the credit game against sales, marketing's going to lose because sales touches 100% of deals. And a sales leader can always just say, tell you what, give me 1,000 sales reps for the same price that you're spending on marketing, and we'll blow revenue through the ceiling. And nobody's actually going to do that unless you're a massive, huge organization. But I mean, that's an argument that sales can make that sometimes wins.
Yeah. Well, and so one of my favorite arguments to make is, how do you think you found those customers? How do you think they found you? Right. So you're right. If you're playing the credit game, everybody's going to lose. That's actually the takeaway I would leave is sales may win versus marketing. Marketing may win versus sales, but everybody loses because we're not thinking about the customer's experience and how to make sure it is a seamless and frictionless one, that they get what they need to get when they come to visit our site or visit our sales team or visit us at a booth at an event. In the end, credit diminishes those points, and it starts to create, robbing Peter to pay Paul situations, which is a terrible place to be. On behalf of the customer, it's a terrible place to be. To your point, I was a sales rep like you were. And so I used to joke with my marketing team, look, if you just give me all that budget, I'll do a bunch of hospitality and dinners and we'll be done. But the argument that I was made by a very stellar marketer at the time was, who are you going to invite? You're going to ask him to come to a dinner. They're like, who are you and why are you calling me? That's the marketing side of this equation. So, it's offense and defense. It's a team sport. We're one team. We do that very well at 8 a.m. I have seen it done poorly in the past at other places, but I can tell you that the credit game is the root cause of most people's problems.
It really is. It is a losing proposition for everybody. I mean, the entire business loses. It's funny because, my very first sales job was exactly that. I was one of 1,000+ sales reps, and our philosophy was our sales reps are our marketing. So we would call people up and we'd be like, I'm calling from company XYZ and I'm here to sell you this. And they'd be like, who are you? So, I mean, it's a nightmare for sales reps to operate in that environment. And can it work? Yes, this was a multi-billion-dollar-a-year organization, but it was extremely difficult and labor-intensive and extremely expensive to manage that many salaries. So yeah, I've experienced that firsthand.
It's funny because when I was at Salesforce, there's a company where when you call somebody, they call you back. Right? I mean, everybody knows them. They know what they can do for you. It's not an unknown entity. If you get a call from somebody at Salesforce, you're probably going to call them back. Why? It's the power of their brand and their reputation in the market. And that is all marketing. So to ignore that is naive. And to decide that sales matters more is short-sighted. So again, back to your point, the game is not about credit. It's about making sure that the customer's experience is extraordinary and that we're all on the same page. So when they ask us questions about things they saw at an event or a dinner or the website or whatever, that the answer is consistent. And if we're consistent, then we create situations like that, which Salesforce has. We're driving that here at 8 a.m. We want our marketing team and the message we put in front of our customers, whether it's an event or website or whatever, to be consistent with the way our sales team speaks. And it's about outcomes and driving outcomes for our customers. And we're totally aligned on that front.
Yeah, I love John Miller, founder of Marketo, has a great analogy of this, that marketing and sales are actually like a soccer team. And you pass the ball back and forth and matriculate down the field to score a goal together. But if without one member of the team or multiple members of the team, it's incredibly more difficult to actually score that goal than if everybody is operating as a team, as one unit and working well together, and we have a full squad.
Yeah.
So
100%.
Yeah. Now, Nate, moving on to another topic, you have this concept that you told me about in our pre-call about reporting versus reading the news. And I love this concept. By the way, I'm going to steal this and use this, but I love this concept. Tell me a little bit about what you mean by reporting versus reading the news when it relates to data and measurement.
Yeah. With access to data, which most of us have nowadays, actually maybe more data than we actually need, to be honest. But what happens is a lot of people rely on the data. They pull the data and they share the data. Well, I can read the data as well as you can. I don't need someone to read it to me. I need you to interpret what it's telling us and why it is the way that it is. So it's more reporting versus reading the news. I can pick up the newspaper and read the article, but the reporter will go into the details behind that article and determine what exactly happened here. Who are the players? Why were they here? What were they doing? What's the story and the rationale behind what was going on in this moment? I don't need someone to read me the newspaper, right? So and I think it is kind of an outcome, if we kind of go up a level in business, of access to data. Data is everywhere. Data is the modern day gold, of businesses. LLMs are thriving based on data. And so because of that prevalence, it's resulted in everybody thinking they need to know the data. But what actually happens is they just read it, and reading it doesn't help. One of the things we have at 8 a.m. is our business ops team and revenue ops team are separate from sales and marketing. Our marketing ops person is not in my work. She reports to the business ops team. Why that's great is she comes to our meetings reporting the news. She's not trying to tell me what I want to hear. She's not trying to, the sales ops team's not telling the sales leader what they want to hear. They're bringing objective insights. And that then causes us to have very constructive, objective conversations about what to do, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be addressed, and what's working really well.
Yeah, I think, the key thing with reporting and data, to your point, in this whole concept of reporting versus reading the news, is not to tell me that, trade shows are up 5% year over year. Like, that's cool, great, congratulations. But I need to know why. Like, what are we doing that's different that's caused us to be up 5%? Just knowing the 5%, I can't do anything with that. I can't action upon that. But if I know the why,
yes,
that I can actually use to take action. And that's the reporting aspect versus the reading aspect.
That's right. You got it. I mean, reporting is like looking in the rearview mirror. I can see what's behind us. I know what I did yesterday. That doesn't help me today. Unless you tell me actually what you did today led you to this, and then therefore I can do something different and change an outcome tomorrow. Now we're talking. And that's analysis. And that's a skill. We have some very skilled data scientists, data analysts, folks on our team that go beyond the numbers. To your point, why is it like this? Oh, the quarter over quarter compare, we're down versus quarter 2 or quarter 3 of 2024. Why? Oh, in 2024, we did this massive event in this particular month. Okay, so it's not that we're down, it's down in compare, but there actually is a reason for it. Now, we don't just do some random act of marketing to change the trajectory based on some data on a page. We actually have an understanding, and that helps us make better decisions.
Yep, absolutely. And, you mentioned your business ops and marketing ops folks being a dedicated department that don't report into marketing and sales, which is a perfect segue into the next topic that we're going to talk about, which is the importance of having an unbiased analyst function in the organization. So you've already kind of hinted about how 8 a.m. approaches this. Tell me a little bit about, in your opinion, why this is so important, because we agree wholeheartedly, but tell me from your perspective why you feel this is so important.
The best metaphor I have for this, Drew, is it's like therapy. If you're arguing with your significant other and you're just coming to a head all the time and can't kind of get over it and you're not really sure why and you're talking over the top of each other, if you go to a therapist, I recommend it for everybody, including if you're on your own. It helps you be a better person. Why? Because they have no skin in the game. They don't have anything that's precious to them. They're just trying to help you understand why you can't have a conversation that's constructive with your partner or with yourself. And that's what the business ops team being separate from marketing and sales represents. They're not coming to the table with a predefined notion of successful outcome. The only outcome is driving the outcomes of the business. And that's true for marketing and sales too, but we get into these situations where we start to kind of covet our things. And I think it's human nature. Like, we put a lot of time and energy into this particular campaign. It's working. Is it really? Take your emotion and the work you put into that campaign out of the equation. If it's not working, we should not continue doing it. And the therapist will tell you, yelling at your spouse is not going to work, right? Claiming credit for things that you don't get credit for is not going to work. And that's what the ops team, being an independent, objective third party, does for us. It eliminates those, sacred cows. It takes emotion and like what we're super proud about out of the equation and just looks at results. Is it working? Is it not? What can we do differently? What can we do better? And then the conversation is rooted in outcomes for the business, outcomes for our customers. And that's where we want to be.
I love the analogy of therapist. That's such a fantastic analogy. And by the way, wholeheartedly agree. Therapy's fantastic. I've done it myself, so wholeheartedly agree. But it's such a great analogy because it is that person that comes in from that third party, viewpoint that just views things objectively. A lot of times I refer to it as like, it's like Stephen King, the author, has an editor. He has
Yeah.
an editor for a reason
Yes.
because he's so emotionally invested in his product that he can't possibly edit it without that emotion and that connection to it influencing and biasing his editing.
That's right. I mean, you got it. That's another great example. I mean, we just went through, you mentioned it in the beginning, we just rebranded our company, formerly AffiniPay, to 8 a.m. There is a lot of work that went into that. Some people, exhaustion. I mean, I can't, kudos to our team. I mean, it was a massive, massive effort. And if we had gotten to now where we're measuring it, now we're like, how is it working? And what's, are we getting lift? And are we bringing along the customers? And are we seeing the numbers that we expect to see? If we just had the brand team or my team report that, it could be very biased towards positive. A lot of green arrows and a lot of green lights. When we turn this over to our third-party business ops team, it will be truthful. It will lack, to your point, the emotional commitment and the emotional calories that were invested from the analysis. And we may not like the answer, but it will make us better and will even improve the brand and improve our journey by looking at it that way. It's a great analogy. Stephen King being his own editor is not a thing, right? For a reason.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that it's so important to kind of highlight this idea of we can't actually make improvements if we are afraid or unwilling to acknowledge what isn't working. And if you're constantly just saying, hey, look, green arrows up and to the right, right? You're never going to actually look at this thing and say, how can we do this better? All you're going to do is create a scoreboard that says, hey, look how great we're doing. This is fantastic. Let's pat ourselves on the back. We're doing great. But we're not actually ever improving because we don't take the time to say, okay, what actually isn't working?
Yeah, it's an interesting point you just made because in our case, a lot of even the objective analysis is green. Like things are green, lots of green arrows. What the objectivity still does though is to say, okay, well, if it's up 12%, how can we get it to 15? If it's up 15, how can we get it to 20? Like they continue to push because even if you're green, the best companies in the world don't sit back high-fiving each other when everything's green and saying we're done. They say, what can we do even better? To your point, how can we improve even more? And the objective third party helps you focus that way. Otherwise, everybody's sitting around high-fiving each other and we're not challenging where we are and where we want to be because the future's coming, whether we want to be there or not. And we want to be ahead of it, not having what I used to say a lot, and I still do with my team, is like, we don't want it happening to us. We want to happen to it. And the objective insights that the kind of BizOps team brings gives us the ability to go affect it, not have it happen to us. And then we're on our heels, trying to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than trying to achieve any other goal. I mean, like you're let's say you're a runner and your goal is to hit we'll keep it simple, hit a 7-minute mile, right?
That's
like, cool.
Yeah.
I got a 7-minute mile. Awesome. Great. Pat myself on the back. That's a green arrow, right? But if I can get 7, why can't I get 6:45?
Yep.
And if I can get 6:45, why can't I get 6:40? So it's that just because you hit a goal or a target doesn't mean that there isn't still room for improvement. And at some point in time, you get to the point where as a runner, in order to go from 7 to 6:30, maybe you need a running coach, right? That's that unbiased third party that comes in and says, well, your stride sucks. So that's why you can't get to 6:30. So yeah, it's just
back
so
to
important.
Yeah, exactly. And to the reporting and insights, reading versus reporting the news thing, right? If the reporting doesn't drive kind of next actions for us, then it's just noise. Like you said earlier, it's just details on a page. It doesn't mean anything. If it helps us take action, this thing we can go improve by doing these things. Now everybody knows what we need to do, and then we allow them to go figure out how to do it, right? That's an aligned and effective autonomous team. Then that's great. But otherwise, it's just noise and it's a distraction.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we're going to go a little out of order here because we were just talking a lot about the rebranding to 8 a.m. And you mentioned measuring that. So did you build a measurement strategy into the larger rebrand strategy? And if so, how are you measuring that?
Yeah, we did. In fact, we made the business case for rebranding the company. We took it to our board, back in December of 2024, say, here is the rationale in financial terms of what this will mean to our business in 4 or 5 key kind of hero metrics. We believe we can be more efficient, like CAC. We believe we can do more cross-sell and upsell because customers will relate these products that we have multiple products for the same buyers to each other in a way that they currently don't. So there's a whole series of those. And then what we did was once we got a board approval to go do this, and we have now done it, now we have a framework and we use Tableau to track all of the metrics of our entire business, not just marketing and sales. But we have those metrics set up in dashboards. We want to see if we're achieving those goals. And the great thing about rebrand is it gives you this very clean line in the sand, right? Prior to and post. And so we have this cohort of prior to and the cohort of post, and we can compare them to each other. And we should see these things going up. We should see, including customer engagement, customer satisfaction, like all boats should rise, and we're measuring all of those things. Now, you made a comment earlier in the discussion about as a sales rep and a monthly cadence was like brutal. This is not a monthly cadence thing, right? Like brand shift, weekly shifts happen. You take share of voice because of a great blog post or piece in an article or a tier 1 publication, and you lose some. So it shifts. We want to take long horizon view of this, and we're looking at it quarterly, not weekly or monthly, because that's where we'll see the biggest opportunities to achieve our goals.
I love that you built the measurement strategy into the larger strategy. We have this concept that the best marketing reporting starts at campaign planning, and which enables you to do things like you just said, which is to determine we're not going to measure this weekly or bi-weekly because there's too many fluctuations. We're going to measure this on a quarterly basis. And we rally everybody around the idea that we're measuring this on a quarterly basis. So when somebody comes and says, hey, how were our brand mentions last week? We can come back and say, we don't measure these on a weekly basis. We all agreed that we're going to measure these on a quarterly basis. So you'll get that report at the quarterly level when it's ready.
Yes.
So I think it's so brilliant to do it as part of campaign planning. And it's something that more marketers need to embrace because not enough marketers actually build measurement strategy into the campaign planning process.
Yeah. Well, it's the fun part about being in a company our size and PE backed is really it forces you to think that way. And then by definition, you do better work. It's like we don't spend a lot of time doing things that don't drive impact and outcomes for our customers and our business. And if you are, you're not going to be able to do it very long because we're going to have another priority that's clearly articulated with clear goals and metrics that's going to supersede that thing. What that drives is a culture of accountability, but also thinking in outcome terms. We're going to launch this blah, and this blah will drive X or Y or Z. If we're going to launch this blah and you can't say X, Y, or Z, we're not doing it. It's just that simple. So you're right that it's really important to build those in up front. And I think, back in 2020s or whatever, when money was free and you could hire 10 more bodies to do one job, that might have been okay to not have to bother with. But today, the world is very different. In fact, one of the things we ask before we start is, that's a great idea. Those outcomes would be great. Now, can we use Gen AI to do any of this? Because it could do a lot, with Lovable and ChatGPT and all these tools that you have access to now. A lot of those objectives can be achieved much, much faster. We just have to approach it with that kind of first principle as well.
Yeah, the other thing I like about this whole process of making sure that you're building out strategy into your campaign planning, or in this case, like a larger strategic planning, is that it puts you in a proactive position as opposed to a reactive position. When you don't build that measurement strategy up front, you're always behind the 8 ball chasing, going, what should we measure? How should we measure it? Hey, we didn't even think about this, but we got to get a report in the next week because somebody's asking questions. You're put in this perpetual reactive state that makes everything a fire drill, as opposed to being in a proactive state where you're controlling the narrative, you're controlling the process, you're controlling the timelines and the cadences and frequencies. And Everybody knows that when you're in a proactive position, it's just better for everybody than
Yeah.
being reactive.
Yeah. And building it in up front makes it, scalable, right? So we don't have to wonder later and like chase, our board meetings happen pretty smoothly. Like we don't have to create a bunch of new content. We know exactly what we're measuring. We've told them we're going to measure it. We show the metrics and we move on. So it's not a scramble, to your point. And this goes back to that thing I said earlier. It's like we want to be happening to it, not have it happening to us. And building metrics in early and having them be stretched. Like one of the things that drives me crazy is you see goals that are like, obviously that should be that's baseline. And then people are hesitant to say, well, the stretch goal you just described, we'd struggle to reach that. Well, the picture on my wall is 1961 or two when JFK was talking about going to the moon. It's the famous speech where he says, by the end of this decade, we will put a man on the moon and return him safely to Earth. That is an audacious goal, and we achieved that. But if you had said, well, halfway there would be good enough, no, it's not. And so stretch, it's okay. It took 10 years, right? I think that's another element to this, which is kind of for the listeners out there. Don't be afraid to put audacious goals in front of some of these things and metrics that feel out of reach, because it will force you to lean in a way that maybe you otherwise wouldn't. And then you have to also complement that with a culture that says not hitting that goal is not failure. It's success to get even close to that. Next year is another shot, right? Like that's in the 60s, we went through that. It took 10 years and we did it in 1969. So I just think there's don't be afraid to be audacious and recognize you may not hit it, but 80% is pretty good. And 80% of a stretch goal is probably higher than I know we can reach it goal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the point of stretch goals is we're going to stretch ourselves. And if we don't hit it, it's okay because we still exceeded what we thought we could do.
You got it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Now, one of the things that you brought up as well that I want to talk a little bit about is, you mentioned in our pre-call that you had this discovery that you all discovered about the trial experience being one of your, most important conversion points and biggest, like, if you want to talk about like intent to buy, the trial experience is like the highest intent you can possibly have. You mentioned that this was an insight that was generated. How was that insight discovered and validated and acted upon? How did you get there and how did you use it?
Yeah. So it's a great one. It's a real time, one example that I love to refer to because it's like very recent. So when you try our software, that trial pathway for customers is a high converting. You mentioned it, and typically it reflects humans, right? I mean, customers that say I want to try this thing are very much more likely to convert to real customers down the road. You're not getting visitors who are just checking something out. It's natural human condition. Versus someone who visits the website and goes away, right? So trials as a source is a very rich source for us to convert customers, but we noticed that they were not converting as high as they used to. And so the question was why? Back to the reporting, not reading the news. And we found that the trial experience had a couple of hurdles in it that didn't need to be there. For one, our automated emails that were going out, we had some issue in our IT side that had like stopped them from getting into the inbox, and they were ending up in people's spam folder. So you're getting this trial activation email saying, go ahead and start, and you're not seeing it. Well, what are you going to do if you're a human being trying some software and you don't see the email that lets you continue? You move on, right? So we had to fix that. And we discovered a couple of, like the first email didn't have clarity on how you get back into the system. What's the URL? It's like a very bunch of little things that we thought, let's address those. Let's get the email out of the spam filter. Let's get it into your inbox. Let's make sure the copy reads correctly, because this is a trial and someone is genuinely interested in spending their time looking at software. Get it to them quickly. And we've seen that turn all the way around, where we're back way north of where we used to be on trial conversions. And the fascinating part, though, to this, Drew, is it was not a marketing thing. It was marketing, product, sales, all of us together say, well, the sales team was like, yeah, when we talk to them, they work really well, but we're just getting fewer of them. Well, the question is why? Oh, because they're ending up in the inbox, the spam folder. They're not ending up in the customer's activation. Like all parties participated. And that conclusion has driven a massive differentiator for us in solving this problem for our customers. At the end of the day, that's, I think, a major takeaway. We moved on from like who sourced the thing to what's best for our customers. Every question is what's best for our customers. How do we help our customers win? And this trial example is a perfect one. No human being wants to go start trying something and can't start actually try it. It's like, imagine going to the Apple store and you're like, can I check out that iPhone? And they're like, no, just, you can't touch it. You can look at it through a glass window, but you can't touch it. Like nobody buy them, right? So like we need to give people pathways to our product. We need to solve for the customer's experience. And by doing so, drive outcomes for our business.
I think the one piece of that where like the activation code gets sent to a spam box and you don't get it, there's a trust factor when you start a free trial, right? And if you can't even deliver an activation code to my inbox, why am I going to trust that you can solve a complex business challenge? And the idea that you guys were able to go through this process, a collaborative process across multiple teams, and discover that so that you can fix something that is so simple of getting the activation code to the inbox, but has such a massive impact on people actually being able to get into the free trial and people building that trust with your product and building that hands-on experience with your product that makes them so much more likely to buy. Like, that's just such a great example of a team-based approach that finds something that is really simple, but hugely impactful.
Yeah, it's a leverage point, right? It's a massive one. And you're right. Trust. That's a customer thing, right? Customers trust you when you get the activation and they sign up and start using it immediately. And if they don't, then that's your point. They don't know if you can even deliver on what they need. That's not a good place to be. The other thing that's important in all this is kind of removing the sacred cows. One of the things we did in the first meeting about this was I fired up Lovable. I fired up Sora, all these new ChatGPT/Gen AI tools, right? Lovable, if you haven't used it yet, is freaking crazy. And you could create a website in a couple of minutes and then change it just by prompt. It's like unreal. And our team started to look at using it for a lot of different use cases. Why do I share that example? You sign up for that and it is seamless and instantaneous. And so we're in this workshop talking about our trial and we're like, let's just look at some world-class examples of how this works. Can we learn anything from these guys or ChatGPT or name your favorite vendor that's doing this well? And we looked at those like, yeah, we could do a lot better. Like that's a team of people who are looking at this from the customer's perspective and saying, if that's world-class, why aren't we? And there's no sacred cows. And that is something that, is fun to be a part of, but it's also important for people to take back to their own teams. Is like, imagine you had somebody on the product side that was like, oh, no, that experience is like it is for a reason. I built it. And so we can't change it. No one said that, but imagine if that's at your company, you got a different problem. And my conclusion there is just, there are so many great examples. Other people have solved this. It's not like you're the first, team that has this issue. Whatever the issue is, others have probably had it. Go talk to your network, go out and look at examples of who's doing it better, and then steal, right? Like, what is that old quote about like copying and or stealing somebody else's idea? It's like the ultimate form of flattery.
I love how you guys are approaching these things. I think you guys are doing some great stuff over at 8 a.m. I hope that this rebrand goes really, really well for you all, and I hope you all all the success in the world. At the end of these sessions, we really like to kind of highlight some key takeaways for folks. So I'm going to kind of run through some bullet points here. First off, the credit game is a disaster. Don't get into the credit game. Most of the time, everybody is going to lose. It's a team sport, and consider the other value of the other parts of the organization that are playing a role in every single deal. The other one is just reporting versus reading the news. Knowing the data and reading the data are two very different things. And ultimately, the point of having this data and these reports is to be able to take action off of them, not just to pat ourselves on the back. Objectivity, super important. Like we just talked about with this whole thing with, the free trial and all that, like that's only happened because we had objective analysts that looked at this through a lens of how do we make this process better as opposed to, how do I protect my own work, right? So the idea of being objective in our analysis and having an objective third party is how you really, really get the best analysis. And then the last one here is setting that measurement strategy up front, whether it's at a campaign level or something super strategic like a rebrand. It not only gives you control over the process, but it also helps you scale. It helps you scale your campaigns. It helps you scale your strategies. And then ultimately building those metrics in very early means that, and I love this quote of yours, we want to be happening to it, not it happening to us.
Yep, you got it. Yeah, Drew, I think those are all the takeaways I would have taken as well. I mean, the reading the news versus reporting the news, for me in my career, it was a transformative observation. Work with people that know how to report and reading the news. If you're doing that in your business meetings or your team meetings, like recognize it because it's not helpful. Anyone can read it. We need reporters. And then we can make actions and take actions that drive outcomes, which is what we all want to do, right? We want to see, I did this and it led to that. That's what every human being wants to be doing. Reading the news is, you're looking in the rearview mirror. You're not looking forward, and you want to be looking forward.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Nate, again, thank you so much for taking your time to speak with us and share your experiences and share your knowledge with our listeners. Really appreciate it. So just thank you so much, and definitely want to keep in contact.
Yeah, thank you so much, Drew. Really enjoyed it. Great conversation.